Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I died on a Tuesday. The cancer ate through my lungs like acid, turning each breath into broken glass, scraping against raw meat. Morphine couldn't touch the agony in those final hours. I remember the hospice nurse's face. Young, pretty, completely unprepared for the sounds a dying man makes when his body finally decides to quit. She held my hand as I drowned in my own fluids, whispering something about peace and rest and God's mercy. She had no idea who she was comforting. The Zodiac Killer. That's what they called me in the newspapers, the documentaries, the endless speculation. The one who sent coded letters and taunted police across Northern California. The one they never caught. They had theories, suspects, DNA that led nowhere. But I'd been careful. So careful. And when forensics got too advanced, when the world got too small, I simply stopped. 40 years I lived under a different name. 40 years of normalcy, hiding in plain sight. I died as Arthur, retired insurance adjuster, unremarkable in every way except for the secret rotting inside me alongside the tumors. Then, nothing. A void so complete it felt like being erased from existence. No tunnel of light, no dead relatives welcoming me home. Just absolute absence, and I thought, well, at least it's over. I was wrong. I woke up in a white room. Not the sterile hospital white I'd grown accustomed to during my final months, but something else entirely. A white so pure it seemed to generate its own luminescence, casting no shadows despite having no visible light source. The walls stretched upward into infinity, or maybe they didn't exist at all. Distance became meaningless in this place. Time felt suspended, each second stretching like taffy. I was sitting in a chair. Leather. Expensive. The kind you'd find in a corner office overlooking Manhattan. Across from me sat a man in a white suit, and the moment I saw him, I knew exactly where I was. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing. Average build, maybe early 50s, with salt and pepper hair slicked back from a face that could belong to any executive you'd pass on Wall Street. Handsome in that ageless, maintained way that wealthy men achieve through careful grooming and expensive skincare. His suit was immaculate, three-piece, perfectly tailored, probably cost more than most people's cars, but the smell gave him away. Sulfur. Not the cartoon stink of matches, but something older, deeper, the reek of volcanic vents and burning stone. Underneath that, a sweeter rot, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. The scent made my eyes water, even though I wasn't entirely sure I still had eyes. "Zodiac," he said, and his voice was warm honey over broken glass. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for decades." My throat, did I have a throat? Constricted. Nobody had used that name in over 40 years. Not out loud. Not to my face. I didn't think hell would look like a corporate boardroom, I managed. My voice sounded strange, clearer than it had in months, without the wet rattle of fluid-filled lungs. The man smiled, and for just a moment, something moved beneath his skin. Something with too many angles and not enough humanity. "Hell is customized for every client," he said pleasantly. "Some people get fire and brimstone, others get isolation. A few get eternally repeating their worst moments." He leaned forward, fingers steepled. "But you? You're special. You get an interview." I don't recall sending a resume. His laugh was genuine, delighted. "Oh, I like you. I told my associates you'd be perfect for this position, and I'm rarely wrong about these things." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a silver case, extracting a cigarette. When he snapped his fingers, it lit with a flame that burned purple for just a heartbeat. "Do you know why you're here?" "The murders." The words came easily. No shame, no hesitation. I'd never felt guilty about what I'd done. "The confirmed ones, the ones they never solved." 7 victims, he said, taking a drag. "Though the number depends on who's counting. That couple at Lake Herman Road, the cab driver in San Francisco, the others." He exhaled smoke that smelled like burning churches. "You were meticulous, theatrical. You enjoyed the game as much as the hunt." My chest tightened with something that might have been pride if I were still capable of such human emotions. He'd done his research. "The thing is," he continued, tapping ash into thin air where it vanished before hitting the ground that might not exist, "I've been watching you for a long time, since before you even knew what you were. That first kill, you were clumsy, impulsive, riding on pure adrenaline. But you learned. You evolved. The ciphers, the letters to the press, the way you turned murder into performance art. It was beautiful." Flattery? Observation. He stubbed out the cigarette on nothing. "You fascinate me because you never lied to yourself. No trauma narrative. No abusive childhood to blame. You killed because you wanted to, because it felt powerful, because you could. Pure, honest monstrosity. It's refreshing." I waited. This was leading somewhere, and I'd always been patient. "Here's your situation," he said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. "You sold your soul, not explicitly. You never signed a contract or summoned me at a crossroads. But every person you murdered, every life you took without remorse, that's a transaction. You took something precious, and now payment is due. So what? Eternal torment? The fire and brimstone you mentioned? That's option one, yes." He reached into his jacket again, this time withdrawing a leather-bound book. It hit the non-existent table between us with a heavy thud that felt too solid for this unreal place. Option two is considerably more interesting. The book opened itself, pages flipping until they stopped on a spread covered in names, photographs, and dense text in a language that hurt to look at directly. "These are people who made deals," he explained. "Real deals. Signed contracts, spoken oaths, blood rituals, the works. Musicians who wanted chart-topping albums. Actors craving roles that would make them legends. Business moguls hungry for billion-dollar empires. Social media stars desperate for millions of followers." His finger traced down the list. Each one read the terms, each one signed anyway, each one agreed to the price. And the price is? Their souls, obviously, but also... He smiled, and this time there was nothing human in it at all. The manner of their death. See, I include a clause. A very specific clause about how they'll die when the contract comes due. Most of them skim right past it, too excited about the fame and fortune to care about fine print. By the time they remember, it's far too late. I leaned forward, drawn in despite myself. "What kind of deaths?" "Creative ones." His eyes gleamed. "Self-inflicted exits. Accidents. Medical emergencies. Mental breakdowns. All explainable by mundane standards, but achieved through very supernatural means. The rapper who wanted to be a legend? His contract specifies death by his own hand after being driven to complete paranoia. The actress who craved eternal youth and beauty? Breakdown from sustained psychological terror. Each death is tailored to maximum suffering while maintaining plausible deniability. And you want me to kill them? No." He waved dismissively. "I want you to collect them. You see, these people don't just die and come here automatically. They resist, they bargain, they pray to gods who stopped listening the moment they signed. Your job would be to break them, drive them to fulfill their contract terms. Torment them until their minds shatter and they do exactly what the fine print demands." My mind, and I definitely still had one, raced through the implications. "You want me to be an enforcer." "I want you to be a hellhound," he corrected. "A specialist. You'd be invisible to them, incorporeal, able to manipulate their environment and their perceptions. You'd have days, sometimes weeks, to work on each target, breaking them down piece by piece until they crack. Think of it as what you did in life, but with better tools and better targets. The most famous faces in the world, and you get to watch them fall apart. And if I refuse?" The temperature dropped. The white room flickered, and for just a second, I saw what lay beneath. Screaming faces pressed against membrane-thin walls. Bodies twisted into geometrically agonizing positions. Sounds that should be impossible for human vocal cords to produce. "Then you burn," he said simply. "Not metaphorically. Not eventually. Right now, forever. In ways specifically calibrated to your particular consciousness. I'll make sure of it personally." The room returned to its false calm. He waited, watching me with the patience of something that had existed since before time had meaning. I thought about the hospice, the humiliation of dying slowly, of becoming weak and helpless, the nurse's pitying expression, the other patients in their rooms, all of them pretending they weren't terrified. I'd hated every second of that weakness. This was power. This was purpose. This was being useful instead of rotting. "What's the catch?" I asked. "Smart man." He grinned. "The catch is you're still damned. This isn't redemption or a path to salvation. You work for me until the end of time, and when, if, you ever stop being useful, you'll end up exactly where you were headed anyway. You'll just have earned a more creative punishment for your efforts." "How many? How many what? How many souls do I need to collect?" He laughed again, genuine and delighted. "Oh, Zodiac, there's no finish line. The contracts never stop. But," he paused thoughtfully, "perform well, and there are promotions, bonuses. After 20 collections, we'll discuss advancement opportunities. 50, you get perks. 100? His smile turned predatory. 100 souls, and you earn something very special indeed. 24 hours back on Earth. In a living body, you can walk, taste, feel again. Do whatever you want for one day, then back to work." I should have been terrified. I should have been begging for mercy, pleading for any alternative. But I'd never been good at should. "When do I start?" The man, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, whatever name you prefer, stood and extended his hand. When I took it, his skin felt like leather stretched over angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. "Right now," he said, "your first assignment. This one's been living off their contract for decades, built an empire on the deal. Now it's time to collect." The book slid across the table toward me. I picked it up, surprisingly heavy, bound in something I suspected wasn't cow leather, and opened to the marked page. The photograph showed a woman I recognized immediately. Everyone would. She'd built an empire that transcended entertainment, fashion lines, beauty products, streaming content, a social media following in the hundreds of millions. Her face had been algorithmically perfected across 1,000 magazine covers, her body discussed and dissected by millions. She'd turned reality television into a billion-dollar dynasty, transformed her family name into a global brand. But the photograph in the book showed something else. Beneath the professional glam shot was another image. Grainy, taken at night, showing a much younger version of her standing in a parking garage. Across from her stood a figure in shadows. Between them, on the hood of a Mercedes, lay a contract written in something that looked rust-colored. 22 years old, Satan said, watching me study the images. Desperate. Her family was drowning in debt, her father's legal troubles were mounting, and she had no discernible talent beyond looking good for cameras. She wanted fame. Real fame. The kind that would last, that would build generational wealth, that would make her untouchable. And you gave it to her. I gave her everything she asked for. Within 18 months of signing, she had a reality show that became a cultural phenomenon. Within 5 years, she was worth more than most Fortune 500 CEOs. Within 10, her name was synonymous with success, beauty, and power. He tapped the contract details. She's had 2 decades of living like a goddess. Now, the bill comes due. I read the terms, written in that strange language that somehow translated itself directly into my understanding. The method of death was specific, cruel, and absolutely perfect for someone who'd built their entire existence on perception and image. Madness, I said. Complete psychological breakdown leading to public self-destruction. She has to destroy everything she built with her own hands, in front of everyone who ever worshipped her, before she ends it herself, yes. Satan's smile was predatory. The paranoia will start slowly. She'll think people are whispering about her, plotting against her. Her own social media metrics will become torture. Every comment, every photograph, every headline will feel like persecution. She'll lash out, make decisions that ruin her carefully crafted image. And the more she tries to control the narrative, the faster it will spiral. How long do I have? 3 weeks. That's what the contract specifies. 21 days from the moment collection begins until the final act. You'll need to be subtle at first. She's surrounded by security, managers, publicists, family members. But you'll find the cracks. People like her always have cracks. I studied the photographs again. There were dozens. Her at fashion shows, on red carpets, in boardrooms, on private jets. Always perfect, always curated, always performing. The contrast with that grainy parking garage image was striking. She'd been so young, so hungry, so willing to sign away her soul for a taste of what she thought was success. She has children, I noted, seeing family photos in the spread. She does, 4 of them. None of whom she mentioned in the contract. Satan's voice was ice. That's the thing about deals with me. People only think about what they're gaining, never about what they're risking. She'll break in front of them. They'll watch their mother unravel in real time, broadcast across every platform she used to dominate. Something in my new form, whatever passed for a conscience and a damn soul working for the devil, flickered, then died. I'd killed couples, shot a man in his cab, terrorized a city with ciphers and threats. I'd never felt remorse then. Why start now? Where is she currently? Los Angeles, Hidden Hills, gated estate with more security than some embassies. But walls don't stop what you are now. He stood, buttoning his jacket. You'll find her in her home office. She's been having trouble sleeping lately. Pre-collection anxiety, though she doesn't know it yet. Her body remembers what her conscious mind buried 20 years ago. The debt is coming due, and on some level, she feels it. The white room began to shift, walls bleeding into shadow. I felt that stretching sensation again, my new form preparing to move between spaces. One more thing, Satan said, his voice following me as reality dissolved. Don't think of these people as victims. Every single name in that book made their choice with clear eyes and full knowledge. They just didn't believe the consequences would ever catch up to them. You're not creating injustice. You're simply enforcing the contract they signed. I understand. Do you? He stepped closer, and I could see the ancient intelligence burning behind his eyes. Because some of these people, many of them, actually, will try to talk to you, beg you, offer you things. They'll cry and pray and make promises. They'll claim they've changed, that they deserve a second chance, that their families need them. And you need to remember, they've been living on borrowed time bought with borrowed power. Every award they won, every dollar they made, every moment of adoration they received, it was all purchased with a contract written in blood. The room dissolved completely. I was falling again, but this time I was ready for it. This time I welcomed it. Oh, and Zodiac? His voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, following me through the void. Welcome to Hell's Employee of the Month program. Try not to enjoy this too much. We want you focused, not sadistic. There's a difference between professional execution and personal pleasure. But he was laughing as he said it. We both knew the truth. For someone like me, the job and the pleasure were the same thing. I landed in California heat, the smell of jasmine and chlorine thick in the air. Night had fallen, but the city glowed with a million lights stretching toward distant mountains. I could taste the smog, feel the thrum of traffic on distant highways, sense the pulse of millions of lives being lived in proximity to each other. The estate sprawled before me, all clean lines and modern architecture. Walls painted that perfect off-white that screamed wealth without vulgarity. Cameras dotted the perimeter. Security lights swept in practiced patterns. 2 guards sat in a booth by the main gate, bored and scrolling through their phones. None of it mattered. I moved through the walls like smoke, pulled toward my target by something deeper than geography. The contract itself, binding her to me across the distance between living and damned. I found her exactly where Satan said she'd be. The home office was larger than most people's apartments, decorated in shades of cream and gold, one entire wall devoted to awards and magazine covers frozen in acrylic. She sat at a desk that probably cost 6 figures, staring at multiple monitors showing analytics, social media feeds, news coverage. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications she wasn't reading. She was older than her carefully edited photos suggested. Not old, just human. real. There were fine lines around her eyes that Photoshop erased, a tension in her jaw that cameras never captured, a slight rounding to her shoulders that suggested exhaustion running deeper than any amount of sleep could fix. But she was still beautiful, still powerful, still completely unaware that her 20-year grace period had just expired. I moved closer, studying her the way I'd once studied victims through windows and parking lots. She was researching herself, reading commentary, checking engagement metrics, analyzing which posts performed well and which fell flat. Even alone in her home office at midnight, she was working, curating, performing for an audience that never stopped watching. That was going to make this so much easier. I reached out, testing my new abilities, and brushed my fingers across the surface of her main monitor. The screen flickered, just for a second, showing something that wasn't there. A comment thread I'd created, words appearing and disappearing too quickly to read, but leaving an impression of viciousness, of judgment, of something turning against her. She blinked, leaning closer to the screen. What the? The comment thread was gone, normal feed restored. But I could see the confusion in her eyes, the slight quickening of her breath. First seed planted. I moved to the awards wall and let my presence create a disturbance in the air. Not visible, not tangible, but enough to make the temperature drop by a few degrees. Enough to make the hair on her arms stand up. She spun in her chair, scanning the room with wide eyes. "Hello?" Her voice was steady, used to command, used to being heard. "Is someone there?" Silence. Just the hum of electronics and the distant sound of Los Angeles existing beyond her walls. She stood, moving toward the door, and I let her feel me watching. Not seeing, not yet, but knowing. That primal instinct every human has, the one that recognizes when a predator has locked onto them as prey. She stopped halfway to the door, hand raised to her throat in an unconscious gesture of vulnerability. "I'm just tired," she whispered to herself. "Too much work. Need to sleep." But she didn't move. She stood frozen in her own home office, surrounded by all the evidence of her success, and felt something her conscious mind couldn't explain, but her soul recognized with absolute certainty. Something had changed. Something was wrong, and no amount of money or fame or power was going to protect her from what was coming. I had 21 days to completely destroy one of the most famous women in the world, driving her to public madness and eventual self-destruction. 21 days to torment someone who'd spent 2 decades believing she'd gotten away with her deal. In life, I'd been the Zodiac Killer. Meticulous, patient, theatrical. In death, I'd become something worse. A hellhound. A collector of souls who'd sold themselves for temporary glory. She finally moved to the door, turning off the lights behind her, trying to shake off the feeling that had settled over her like a burial shroud. But I stayed in the office, watching the monitors glow in the darkness, already planning. Day 1 would be subtle. Technical glitches, strange comments that disappeared, the sense of being watched. Day 2, I'd escalate. By day 7, she wouldn't be able to tell reality from hallucination. By day 14, she'd be making public mistakes that would fracture her carefully constructed image. By day 21, well. The contract was very specific about day 21. I moved through her house, learning the space, observing the other occupants, assistants sleeping in guest quarters, nannies in the children's wing, that massive security presence trying to protect her from external threats. None of them could protect her from me. As I drifted back to the office, something in my new form settled into place. Purpose. Direction. The clarity that comes from accepting what you are and what you're meant to do. I'd been a killer in life. I'd enjoyed the hunt, the terror, the power. Now I was something else, something worse. But the core impulse remained the same. Find the vulnerability, exploit the weakness, drive them toward the inevitable conclusion. And I had all the time in the world to perfect my craft. The woman, this mogul, this icon, this carefully constructed brand, had no idea what was waiting for her in the morning. No idea that her empire was about to crumble from the inside out. No idea that the paranoia creeping into her thoughts was just the beginning. I watched her bedroom door close at the end of a hallway that probably cost more than most people's houses. Watched the light under the door stay on. She wouldn't sleep tonight. The contract was already working on her, anxiety bleeding through like poison in her veins. 20 years she'd lived off this deal. 20 years of unprecedented success, of wealth beyond measure, of becoming one of the most recognized faces on the planet. Now it was time to pay. Welcome to the job, Zodiac. Day 7, and she was already cracking. I watched from the corner of her bedroom as she sat on the edge of her bed at 4 in the morning, phone clutched in trembling hands, scrolling through comment sections that I'd carefully poisoned. Not all of them, that would be too obvious, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. "They're turning on me," she whispered to the empty room. Her voice had lost that practiced confidence, replaced by something raw and frightened. "I can feel it." She wasn't wrong. For the past week, I'd been a ghost in her machine, corrupting analytics to show declining engagement, manufacturing controversial screenshots that disappeared before anyone else could verify them, creating the sensation of being watched, even when she was completely alone. Technical glitches that made her look incompetent during business calls. Whispers in empty rooms that sounded almost like her own voice, mocking her. The security footage from her house showed nothing unusual. Her team insisted everything was fine, that her metrics were actually up. But I'd gotten into her head, and reality didn't matter anymore. Only perception did. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Beyond the glass, Los Angeles sprawled in the pre-dawn gloom. Millions of people sleeping peacefully while one of the most powerful women in entertainment slowly came apart at the seams. I manifested more solidly this time, not visible, but present enough that she could feel the weight of my attention pressing against her consciousness. The temperature in the room dropped. Frost began forming on the windows, delicate patterns that spelled out words in a language older than human civilization. She saw them. I know she did. Her breath caught, and she backed away from the window so fast she stumbled over her own feet. "This isn't real," she said, but her voice shook with the knowledge that it was very, very real. "I'm just exhausted, stressed. I need to—" Her phone buzzed, a notification. I'd crafted it carefully, a news alert about her. But when she opened it, the article would be different from what anyone else saw. Just for her eyes, a story about her empire collapsing, about betrayals and scandals and everything she'd built turning to ash. She read it. I watched her face go pale, watched her fingers tighten on the phone until the screen protector cracked. No, this can't—" She was dialing before she finished the sentence. Marcus, wake up. Have you seen the news? The story about—" "What? No. It's right here on—" "What do you mean there's no story? I'm looking at it right now." But when she showed him the screen over video call, he saw something different. Something innocuous. She looked insane, paranoid, exactly as I needed her to look. By day 14, she'd fired 3 assistants, accused her business partners of plotting against her, and posted a rambling social media rant at 3 in the morning that her team had to delete within minutes. The tabloids were starting to notice. Her carefully curated image was developing hairline fractures. By day 20, she wasn't sleeping at all. I made sure of that. Every time she closed her eyes, I was there. Not in dreams, but in that space between waking and sleep, where the mind is most vulnerable. I showed her things. Her empire crumbling. Her children turning away from her. Her face aging and withering until she was unrecognizable. The parking garage where she'd signed the contract, playing on endless loop. Except now she could see what stood in the shadows across from her younger self. She saw me, or rather, she saw what her mind interpreted as me. Something vast and hungry and patient. Something that had been waiting 20 years to collect what it was owed. On day 21, she stood on the balcony of her bedroom at dawn. Los Angeles stretched below her, golden light touching the hills, the city waking up to another day of commerce and dreams and people clawing for the same success she'd achieved. I stood beside her, fully manifest now. She could see me. Or rather, she saw the shadow I cast, the distortion in reality that marked my presence. Her contract had come due. The bill was paid. And she knew, with the absolute certainty that only the damned possess, exactly what was about to happen. "I didn't think it would be real," she whispered. Tears tracked through her makeup, running mascara down her cheeks. "I was so young. I thought it was just... I don't know what I thought." I said nothing. I'd learned in life that silence was often more terrifying than words. "My children," she said. "What happens to them?" "They'll inherit your empire," I thought but didn't say. "They'll fight over it, probably destroy it within a generation, and learn nothing from your mistakes. That's how these things work." She climbed onto the balcony railing. Her hands were steady now, steadier than they'd been in weeks. The paranoia had burned itself out, leaving only clarity and acceptance in its wake. She'd fought the contract, denied it, raged against it. Now there was nothing left but completion. "I remember your face," she said, staring at the shadow I cast. "From that night. You were there, weren't you? Watching him make the offer. Waiting." I had been. I was always there, in the background of these transactions. The hellhound waiting to collect. She didn't scream as she fell. Didn't change her mind. She simply let go, and gravity did the rest. I followed her soul as it tore free from the broken body 4 stories below. It was a screaming, writhing thing, not ready, never ready, clinging to life even as life released its grip. I wrapped my new form around it, felt it struggling against my hold, and pulled. The portal opened beneath us, a tier in reality that led somewhere deeper and darker than Los Angeles at dawn. I dragged her through, ignoring the screams that no living ear could hear, and delivered her to the place she'd signed herself into 2 decades ago. Satan was waiting. "Well done," he said, examining the soul as it continued to thrash and wail. "Textbook execution." The public breakdown was particularly nice. Her final social media posts will be analyzed for years. People will wonder if she was mentally ill, if fame broke her, if there were warning signs they missed. He smiled. "No one will ever suspect the truth." The soul in my grip went silent, realizing where it was, realizing what came next. "Your next assignment," Satan said, handing me the book again. It fell open to a new page. "This one should be interesting. Hip-hop legend, revolutionized the genre, built an empire on music and fashion. Signed when he was 19, wanted to be the greatest rapper alive. I made him a god in the industry. Multiple platinum albums, fashion lines, partnerships with major brands. Married to another celebrity. Billions in the bank." I studied the photograph. I knew him too, everyone did. His face was on billboards, his music played in every club, his influence touched multiple generations. He'd redefined hip-hop culture, become more than just an entertainer. He was an icon. What's his clause? Paranoid psychosis followed by a very public mental breakdown. He has to destroy his own reputation, alienate everyone who ever supported him, burn every bridge he built. Then cardiac arrest from sustained psychological stress. You have 30 days. 30 days, longer than the last one. More time to work, to build, to break him properly. "He's already showing cracks," Satan continued. "Public outbursts, controversial statements, erratic behavior. Your job is to push him over the edge. Make it look like the pressure of fame finally broke him. Make sure everyone believes it was inevitable." I took the assignment. The soul I'd collected was being dragged away by things I didn't want to look at too closely. Hell's infrastructure, processing the damned according to their specific contracts. "One down," I said. 19 to go until promotion. Satan's laugh echoed through that impossible space. "Oh, you're going to enjoy the next few months. Zodiac, I've got quite the list for you." He wasn't wrong. Assignment 2. A comedian. Not just any comedian. A legend who defined stand-up for 3 decades, sold out arenas, hosted award shows, starred in blockbuster films. He'd signed at 25, desperate to break through in an industry that had rejected him repeatedly. His clause specified death by his own hand after being driven to crippling guilt over his past actions. It turned out he had plenty to feel guilty about. The contract had given him fame and protected him from consequences, but it hadn't erased what he'd done. I simply made sure he couldn't forget anymore. Made sure every victim's face appeared in crowds, in mirrors, in his dreams. made sure their voices echoed in empty rooms. 14 days. He hanged himself in his home office, surrounded by awards and photographs of better times. Assignment 3. An actress. She'd been on the edge of success when she signed. Beautiful, talented, but lacking that indefinable quality that separates working actors from stars. The contract gave her that quality. Within 2 years, she was an A-lister. Within 5, an Oscar winner. Within 10, one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. Her clause was elegant, complete loss of self. She had to forget who she really was, lose herself in the roles she played until she couldn't distinguish reality from performance. Then, a fatal accident during a mental breakdown. 21 days. She drove her car off Mulholland Drive at 2 in the morning, convinced she was her most famous character driving to save someone who didn't exist. Assignment 4. A tech entrepreneur. Started coding in his parents' garage, signed at 22 when his first startup was failing. The contract saved the company, turned it into one of the most valuable tech firms in the world, made him a billionaire before 30, put him on magazine covers, made him a visionary people compared to the great inventors of history. His clause was fitting. Death by his own creations. Paranoia that his technology was watching him, judging him, planning to replace him. I made every algorithm seem malicious, every notification a threat, every device a spy. He barricaded himself in his compound, smashed every computer and phone, and died from a stroke brought on by sustained terror and isolation. 18 days. Assignment 5. A pop star. One of those manufactured talents. Pretty face, decent voice, but nothing exceptional. She signed at 16, her stage mother pushing her toward fame with religious fervor. The contract made her voice perfect, her presence magnetic, her songs inescapable. She became the biggest pop star of her generation, toured the world, influenced fashion and culture. Her clause was cruel. She had to watch her voice fail. Every performance, every note, slowly degrading until she sounded like a parody of herself. Then cardiac arrest from the stress of trying to maintain the illusion. I gave her 15 days of watching her gift rot in real time. She died on stage during a comeback concert, clutching the microphone as her heart gave out. The collections blurred together after that, each one unique, each one damned by their own specific contracts, each one convinced until the very end that somehow they'd escape what they'd agreed to. Assignment 6. A fashion designer who'd revolutionized the industry, signed away her soul for the ability to see trends before they happened. Died in a fire in her studio, trapped by fabrics that shouldn't have been flammable. Assignment 7. A professional athlete who'd broken records across his sport, signed for perfect physical performance, destroyed by his body failing spectacularly. Every record he'd set rendered meaningless as his muscles and bones betrayed him in the most public way possible. Assignment 8. A social media influencer who'd built an empire on authenticity and relatability, signed for the ability to manufacture viral content, drove herself into paranoid obsession with metrics and engagement, stopped eating and sleeping to maintain her presence online. Heart failure at 29. Assignment 9. A television producer who'd created some of the most successful shows in history, signed for the ability to predict what audiences wanted. Died convinced that everyone was stealing his ideas, that he was being erased from his own legacy. Assignment 10. A best-selling author who'd signed for the ability to write stories that would touch millions. Her clause required her to lose the ability to write at all, watching her creativity drain away, her mind going blank every time she tried to create. She walked into the ocean off Malibu Beach at sunset. 10 souls collected. Halfway to my first milestone. I was getting better at this, faster, more efficient. I learned each target's specific fears, their hidden shames, the cracks in their carefully constructed public personas. I became expert at manufacturing paranoia, at turning success into torture, at making fame feel like a prison with walls closing in. Assignment 11. A musician who'd changed rock music, signed for virtuoso ability on his instrument. I made his hands betray him, made every note sound discordant to his ears alone. He destroyed his instruments one by one, and then himself. Assignment 12. A politician who'd risen impossibly fast, signed for charisma and the ability to read people. I turned his gift against him, made him see everyone as an enemy, every smile as a threat. He suffered a fatal stroke during a speech where he accused his closest allies of treason. Assignment 13. A film director whose movies had defined cinema for a generation, signed for vision and the ability to bring impossible images to life. I showed him visions he couldn't capture, couldn't share, couldn't escape. He was found in his editing bay, dead from dehydration after spending 9 days trying to cut a film that existed only in his deteriorating mind. Assignment 14. A supermodel who'd dominated fashion for 20 years, signed for eternal youth and beauty. Her clause was particularly vicious. She had to watch herself age rapidly, decades of postponed decay hitting all at once. Mirror by mirror, photograph by photograph, watching her contract-sustained perfection rot away. Overdose in a hotel bathroom, surrounded by broken mirrors. Assignment 15. An entrepreneur who'd built a business empire across multiple industries, signed for business acumen and the ability to predict market trends. I made every decision wrong, every instinct false. He lost everything in 30 days and threw himself from his office building when the bankruptcy papers were filed. Assignment 16. A television host who'd defined late-night television for decades, signed for wit and the ability to make people laugh. I took that away, made every joke fall flat in his own ears, every laugh sound mocking. He died of a heart attack during what should have been his triumphant final episode. Assignment 17. A video game designer who'd created cultural phenomena, signed for creativity and vision in a new medium. I trapped him in his own creations, hallucinations of game worlds bleeding into reality, unable to distinguish the digital from the real. He starved to death at his computer, convinced he was still playing a game where eating wasn't necessary. Assignment 18. A makeup mogul who'd built a beauty empire worth billions, signed for trend-setting ability and influence. I made her see decay in every face, made beauty look like rot. She destroyed her own company with increasingly bizarre product launches before taking a fatal dose of pills from her own cosmetics lab. Assignment 19. A streaming platform executive who'd revolutionized how people consumed content, signed for the ability to know exactly what audiences wanted. I flooded his mind with too much information. Every show, every preference, every algorithm, all at once. His brain couldn't process it. Aneurysm during a board meeting. Assignment 20. A young actress who'd achieved impossible fame from a franchise that defined a generation. She'd signed at 14, pushed by her parents, desperate to be chosen for a role that would make her immortal. The contract made her perfect for that role, and trapped her in it forever. Every other performance felt wrong. Every attempt to grow as an artist failed. I showed her the truth. She'd never be anything but that one character, forever. Pills and alcohol in a hotel room in London, just like the contract specified. 20 souls, 20 collections, 20 people who'd traded everything for temporary glory. I stood in Satan's office again, or rather, the space that served as his office when he wanted one. He was reviewing my work like a manager evaluating quarterly performance. Impressive, he said, closing the book. Efficient, creative, thorough. You've exceeded expectations, Zodiac. Some of my older collectors take years to reach 20. You've done it in months. They made it easy, I said. Every single one of them had exactly the weakness their contract specified. They signed knowing the price, then spent years pretending they'd somehow escape it. That's humanity for you. He stood, walking to a window that looked out over something that definitely wasn't Earth. They always think they're special, that rules apply to everyone but them, that they're clever enough to find the loophole, strong enough to resist the inevitable. He turned back to me. You were the same way in life, weren't you? Thought you were too smart to get caught. I was too smart to get caught. I died free. You died of cancer, screaming in a hospice bed, holding a nurse's hand while she whispered prayers you didn't believe in. His eyes gleamed. But I take your point. You succeeded where others failed. That's why I chose you for this. He snapped his fingers, and I felt something change. Not in the space around me. In me. My form. My essence. Whatever constituted my existence in this damned state, shifted and solidified. Congratulations, Zodiac. You're promoted. Semi-demon status, effective immediately. Power flooded through me. Real power. Not just the spectral abilities I'd been using. I could feel the difference immediately. Stronger. More present. More real. And the reward? I asked. Ah, yes. The 100-soul milestone. He pulled out a different book. This one bound in what looked like human skin. For every 100 souls you collect, you get 24 hours back on Earth. In a living body, you can possess any human you choose, one who won't remember what happened during those hours. You can eat, drink, feel, experience everything you've been denied since death. His smile was wicked. You can even kill again, if you want. Though I'd prefer you not get caught. Bad for business. A day of life. Just one day, after 100 collections. It should have seemed like an impossible goal. A carrot on a stick designed to keep me working forever. But I'd collected 20 souls in a matter of months. 80 more didn't seem unreachable. It seemed inevitable. What's my next assignment? I asked. Satan's laugh filled the impossible space. That's what I love about you, Zodiac. No rest, no hesitation. Just straight back to work. He opened the book to a marked page. This one's special. A true legend. Changed music. Changed culture. Changed everything. Multiple generations have grown up with their work. They're going to be a challenge. The contract is older, the terms more complex, the target more aware. I looked at the photograph. My form, my new, more powerful form, hummed with anticipation. When do I start? Right now, Satan said. And Zodiac? Make this one memorable. They've had 40 years to prepare for this moment. Show them that preparation means nothing when hell comes to collect. I took the book, felt the weight of it, the power contained in those contracts. 80 more souls between me and a day of living. 80 more people who'd sold their souls for temporary glory, convinced they'd somehow escape the bill when it came due. I'd been a killer in life, patient, methodical, theatrical. In death, I'd become something worse. Something that didn't just end lives but collected souls. Something that turned fame into torture and success into damnation. And I was just getting started. The shadows opened, reality tearing itself apart to let me through. Somewhere on Earth, someone famous was about to have the worst night of their very long, very successful, very damned life. I couldn't wait to get started. Assignment 21 was different from the start. Nashville, Tennessee. The target lived in a compound outside the city. A music legend who'd been famous since before I was born. Their voice had soundtracked decades. Their influence immeasurable. They'd signed 40 years ago when their career was dying, and the contract had given them everything. The terms were poetic. Death by fading. Voice first, then memories, then identity. 60 days to erase a legend. I watched them perform that night, still commanding despite their age, but they knew. I could see it in their eyes between songs. They'd been waiting 40 years for me. Finally coming for me, aren't you? They said to their empty dressing room afterward. To me. I got my 40 years. Can't complain about the price. But they did complain, as I dismantled everything. Voice cracking on live television. Memories vanishing. Awards, recordings, performances, all erased from their mind. By day 40 they were confused, frightened, asking staff about a life they couldn't remember. Day 60, they sat in their music room asking the nurse, "Who am I?" Their hearts stopped midway through the explanation. Just stopped, quiet as a light switching off. I collected the confused, diminished soul and delivered it to hell. The slow fade, Satan said, examining it. Elegant work. He handed me the book again. 80 more to go. The collections became rhythm, purpose. Each target unique, each soul a step closer. Assignment 25. A daytime talk show legend who'd connected with audiences for decades. I made every conversation drain them, every interaction painful. Heart attack during a live taping, cameras rolling. Assignment 33. A Silicon Valley venture capitalist with a perfect track record. I corrupted his gift. Every instinct wrong, every prediction false. Empire collapsed in weeks. Stepped in front of a train. Assignment 41. A celebrity chef whose restaurants defined American cuisine. I made food taste like ash in his mouth. Overdose in his flagship kitchen, surrounded by dishes he could no longer bear to create. Assignment 50. A photographer whose images had captured cultural history. I made him see decay in everything beautiful. He destroyed his entire archive, decades of work, before destroying himself. 50 souls, halfway to my reward. You're setting records, Satan told me. Fastest collector in modern history. The old guard took centuries. I'm motivated. You're obsessed, he smiled. I love it. But I couldn't slow down. Every soul brought me closer to feeling alive again. To 24 hours of rain and food and walking on actual ground. The next 50 blurred past. A journalist I drove to paranoid delusion. A choreographer whose vision I stole. A plastic surgeon whose perfect hands I made shake. A children's author who saw horror in her own innocent tales. A video game streamer who broke during a live stream watched by millions. A wellness guru who starved following her own impossible protocols. Assignment 98. A former child star, signed by greedy parents at age 7. Already broken by decades of trying to escape that one role. 8 days until I found them surrounded by empty pill bottles, still wearing the costume that made them famous. Assignment 99. A political commentator whose media empire I collapsed in real time. Heart attack during the broadcast where his own network dropped him. One more. Satan made the final assignment special. For your 100th, he said, handing me the book with ceremony. Someone who's been on my list longer than anyone else currently active. Someone who's built multiple empires, influenced generations, become more than just famous, become mythological. The photograph showed someone everyone would recognize. They'd been famous since the 1960s, reinventing themselves decade after decade, surviving scandal after scandal, remaining relevant through sheer force of will and contractual obligation. Music, film, business, philanthropy. Their fingers were in everything, their influence inescapable. 62 years, Satan said quietly. They signed in 1962. Nobody in a Detroit nightclub, desperate for a break. I gave them everything. Made them a superstar. Made them immortal in the cultural consciousness. Made them untouchable. And now? Now their contract specifies something special. They don't just die, they're erased. Every recording, every film, every photograph, every memory anyone has of them. It all becomes corrupted, false, questionable. Their entire legacy becomes suspect. They die knowing that everything they built will be questioned and dismantled after they're gone. It was the cruelest clause I'd ever seen. Not just death, but the destruction of everything that came before it. How long? 90 days. Make it thorough. This one sends a message to everyone else who thinks they can sign with me and somehow maintain dignity in the end. I took the assignment. Materialized in Los Angeles, in the hills above the city, outside a mansion that looked like a monument to success. The target was hosting a party. Hundreds of guests, celebrities and power players, everyone who mattered in entertainment and business. I moved through the crowd invisibly, studying them. They were older now in their 80s, but still vibrant, still commanding, still playing the role they'd built over 62 years. But I could see the cracks. The effort it took to maintain the performance, the exhaustion behind the smile, the knowledge that time was finally catching up to contracts written in blood. I started that night. A small corruption. A recording played at the party that sounded slightly wrong, off-key in ways only they could hear. A photograph on the wall where their face looked subtly different, not quite right, almost like someone else. They noticed. I saw them pause, confusion flickering across their face before the performance mask slid back into place. Over the following weeks, I systematically corrupted their entire legacy. Recordings developed strange artifacts, like they'd been manipulated or edited. Films showed continuity errors that shouldn't exist. Photographs appeared in collections with metadata that didn't match the documented dates. Interviews surfaced with quotes they swore they never said. The internet conspiracy theories started within days. Deepfakes, AI manipulation, questions about authenticity. People began examining their entire catalog, finding evidence of corruption and forgery. The target issued statements, held press conferences, hired lawyers and technical experts to prove everything was authentic. But I was always ahead of them, always corrupting faster than they could verify, always making their legacy look questionable. By day 45, major news outlets were running pieces about the authenticity crisis surrounding their work. Younger generations who'd never questioned their cultural status began dismissing them as overrated, as a product of hype and manipulation rather than genuine talent. By day 60, their own collaborators were giving interviews expressing doubts, questioning memories, wondering if maybe they'd misremembered how good things actually were. By day 80, the target was essentially under house arrest in their mansion, refusing to appear in public, watching their legacy dissolve in real time across every media platform. On day 90, they sat alone in their home theater, watching a compilation of their greatest moments, except every performance looked slightly off, every triumph slightly questionable, every achievement contaminated by doubt. "You win," they said to the empty theater. To me. "You've taken everything, the fame, the legacy, the truth. 62 years of work, and you've made it all meaningless." Their hearts stopped during the final film. Just stopped, quietly, alone, in a theater full of achievements that no longer felt real. I collected the soul, bitter, defeated, watching its own legacy burn even in damnation, and delivered it to hell. Satan was waiting, and he wasn't alone. There were others, administrators, observers, entities I couldn't quite look at directly. This was ceremonial. 100 souls, Satan announced, collected in 1 year, 7 months, and 12 days. The fastest completion of a century milestone in Hell's recorded history. He smiled at me. "Well done, Zodiac. You've exceeded every expectation." The power that flooded through me was different from the semi-demon promotion. This was permission, access, authority. "Your reward is earned," Satan said. 24 hours on Earth in a living body of your choosing. You can eat, drink, feel, experience everything you've been denied. You can even kill again, if you're discreet. His eyes gleamed. "What will you do with your day, Zodiac?" I'd thought about this during every collection, planned it, refined it, imagined it in detail during the work. "I want to go home," I said. "San Francisco. I want to walk the places I walked in life. I want to remember what it was like to be human, even a monstrous one." "Then go," Satan said. "You've earned it. 24 hours starting now. The body is ready, the possession complete. Enjoy your day among the living. You've worked hard for it." Reality shifted. I fell into flesh and blood and bone, a living body, a random man whose consciousness was suspended somewhere safe. I opened eyes, actual eyes, in a hotel room downtown. The sensations hit at once. Sheets against skin, rough cotton with a thread count I could feel. Traffic sounds, car horns, engines, the rhythmic thump of bass from a passing vehicle. The smell of the city hit me like a memory. Exhaust mixing with salt water from the bay. Fog carrying the scent of coffee from a shop below. The faint chemical smell of hotel cleaning products. My mouth tasted of sleep. My lungs expanded with air. The weight of gravity pulled at this borrowed body in ways I'd forgotten. I stood, felt carpet fibers under bare feet, walked to the window on legs that obeyed my will but weren't mine. San Francisco sprawled below. The city I'd terrorized 50 years ago when I was alive and anonymous and free. Still beautiful. Still chaotic. Still the perfect hunting ground. I spent the first hour just experiencing existence. Took a shower. Hot water cascading over skin, steam filling the small bathroom. The pleasure of being clean. I could feel temperature, pressure, the simple joy of physical sensation. Breakfast tasted like revelation. Coffee bitter and hot. Toast with butter that melted on my tongue. Orange juice sharp with acidity. Every flavor distinct, overwhelming, perfect. I walked the streets feeling everything. Pavement under shoes, cool morning air, sun warming my borrowed face, the brush of strangers passing on crowded sidewalks. I was real again, solid, present in a way I hadn't been since cancer took my last breath. Then I went hunting. Not seriously. I wasn't stupid enough to risk the job. But I walked past places where I'd killed. Stood in parking lots where couples had died, their blood long since washed away by decades of rain. Visited the intersection where a cab driver took his last fare, now just another street corner with no memorial, no marker of what happened there. No remorse, just memory and cold appreciation for how good I'd been. I walked the Presidio, climbed to where I'd watched the city through a rifle scope. The view had changed, new buildings, different skyline, but the bay still glittered in afternoon light. I visited the library, sat at a public computer, looked up articles about the unsolved case. They were still writing about me, still theorizing, still wrong about everything. They'd never caught me, never came close. I'd been a ghost in life, and now I was actually a ghost, working for hell, collecting the souls of people who'd traded everything for temporary glory. As sunset touched the Golden Gate Bridge, turning the sky orange and purple, I sat in a park watching the light change, felt temperature drop as evening came, breathed fog rolling in from the ocean. 24 hours. One day of life for every 100 souls collected. 900 more souls for 10 more days scattered across eternity. It should have felt hopeless. Endless work for tiny rewards. But I'd never needed hope. I operated on purpose, on satisfaction and work done well. At midnight, I found myself at Lake Herman Road, where it all began. Where I took my first victims, started the legend, began the work that would define my life and apparently my afterlife. The possession was ending. The borrowed body starting to reject me, muscles twitching, heart rate increasing as the real owner's consciousness stirred. Worth it, I said to the empty parking lot. To ghosts only I could see, to the future stretching ahead, endless collections, endless hunting, endless purpose. The body collapsed as I left it. The man would wake confused, disoriented, wondering why he was lying in a parking lot with no memory of the past day. He'd never know his body had been used to let a dead serial killer walk the earth one more time. I returned to hell. Satan was waiting with the book already open. How was it? Perfect. Everything I needed. Good. Now you know what you're working toward. 900 more souls, 9 more days scattered across eternity. I took the book, looked at the next target. When do I start? His laugh echoed through hell. Most collectors need time to recover, but not you. I prefer the job to burning, and I'm good at this, better than killing. This has purpose, structure, clear objectives. Then get to work. Hell's Employee of the Month program waits for no one. 100 souls collected. 900 to go, then 900 more. Then 900 more. Eternal work, eternal purpose, eternal hunting. I'd been the Zodiac killer in life, unsolved, uncaught, unrepentant. In death, something worse. Something that didn't just end lives but collected souls. Something that turned fame into damnation. And I was exactly where I belonged. Welcome to eternity, Zodiac. The work never ends, and that's exactly how I wanted it.
Did she wear the skins of Kieran or something like that?
No, she's gonna wear the skins of Dalmatians, duh.
But it's ponies. I think it'd be maybe cows. Then the
No,
cow.